Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. I'm Jack Lohr, Vice President of the Society for this year and Worship Associate for today. I'll be helping the service along from up front and also handling Zoom tech. It looks like I've got my speaker on over there, and that's a problem. I have it on the page here to say I'm trying to do the tech, and I apologize in advance for all of the technical glitches. There you go. For a century and a quarter, the USR has been meeting on this land, stolen or taken by deceit from people of the Wolf and Turkey clans of the Lenni Lenape, and our neighbors in Ringwood, New Jersey, the Turtle clan of the Ramapo Lenape. We also acknowledge that we are beneficiaries of the forced labor of enslaved Africans. This is the truth. We say it not to cast shade upon ourselves, but to be able to worship in the light of a truthful context, to acknowledge who we are. Unitarian Universalists are united around 7 principal values rather than a dogma or creed. We share a relationship in covenant with each other, declaring how we will be together as we seek the deep truths of being human and living well. We commit to kindness, intention, and love as we ask questions and as we remember our spiritual inheritances, a belief in the interconnection of all things, and a belief that love can change the world. Here we extend our embrace, called by shared statements of conscience affirming the importance of working for racial justice, environmental justice, and LGBTQ justice. Our work to right this world is never done, even as with joy we affirm that all is beautiful and wondrous. If you're new to USR and want to know more about us and who we are, what we do, the best thing is to talk to somebody. If you're here in Anderson, feel free to chat with anyone here, and we will get you connected to our website and e-blasts. If you're online, please do remain for the virtual coffee hour, breakout rooms, so you can chat with other folks, and also fill out the online form that you will get to help you get onto our email lists. Finally, just as a reminder that since we are back in person, we all need to remember to silence electronic devices if we are present here in Anderson. It is truly a pleasure and a privilege to be with you here today. I invite you to join now in the words for lighting the chalice, which will be on the screen. Light this chalice, the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action, as we gather together in the circle of community. The Bell of Mindfulness invites us to come back to the here and the now. When we hear the bell, we stop. Whether we're talking, texting, surfing, whatever we're doing, we focus just on mindful breathing. For 3 full breaths, we simply listen to the bell, aware of each in-breath and each out-breath. So listen, listen. This wonderful sound calls us back to our true home. On this first Sunday after Thanksgiving, or as some of our Native American neighbors call it, the supposed holiday that we don't celebrate, there are several sacred aspects to the calendar. Many Christians are observing the first Sunday of Advent, the season of preparation for Christmas. This evening, many Jews will be observing the first night of Hanukkah. In Ridgewood, there will be a menorah lighting at the Memorial Park at Van Ness Square starting at 5:30 p.m. And this weekend, members of the Baha'i faith mark the centennial of the death of Abdul Baha, the son and successor to the founder of their religion. We are entering into a season typically filled with preparations and parties, as in the Northern Hemisphere, we deal with the emotional and spiritual impact of shorter days and longer nights. The lighting of candles, the reveling to cast out the darkness are some of the ways that we counteract the subliminal effects of these days. Some of us may be sad or lonely or excited or whatever, you name it. The feelings are what they are. We are only too conscious of the yearnings for and uncertainty of comfort and joy. And still, we know this: whatever we're experiencing, we'll cope with it better as a community rather than individuals. And that's why we gather each week as the Unitarian Society of Ridgewood. Thank you for being here today. The theme for today is gratitude. Our meditation and our homily will be by the Reverend Susan Frederick-Gray, President of the Unitarian Universalist Association. And all of our music today comes from Johannes Brahms, selected by Ron Levy. Brahms' soul may resonate with many of our own. His compositions combine classical and romantic elements, and his spirit has been described as agnostic and humanist. We might even nominate Brahms as one of the patron saints of USR. Now, one of the promises we make to each other in our shared covenant at USR is to support this congregation with our presence, gifts, and service, and to care for each other in the long-term well-being of our community. This is the time in our service when we put that promise into action by reminding each other that we share a vision of justice and freedom for this world, and that it will take all of our different gifts, talents, and support to make that vision a reality. A couple of announcements about how to get involved here at USR. There's a place for you in our circles if you're not already engaged. These handle the work and the programs of the congregation. Speak to a board member, to Reverend Sarah Lenzi or to Ann Peretti. Let us know that you are passionate about something, and we will find, no matter what your interest, a way for you to get connected to accompany others in this journey. Also, please remember that this Tuesday is the final conversation on Clint Smith's book, How the Word is Passed. Even if you haven't read the book, I encourage you to join the discussion on Zoom at 7:30. Details can be found on Realm and in an email that you will get on Tuesday. For our December giving on Reed Porch, we will be collecting food, toys, and other items for a Pathway to Hope, which is dedicated to the rescue, rehabilitation, and adoption of abandoned dogs and cats, with a focus on special needs cases and servicing Bergen and Passaic counties. Look for the e-blast that will provide details, the wish list for the drive, and participate as you have in the past. We also uphold our covenant, of course, by our annual and our weekly giving. This month of November, we are sharing the plate with Share Incorporated. About 40 years ago, leaders of our congregation saw an urgent need for affordable housing for independent older adults in Bergen County. They teamed up with others in the community and created a nonprofit and raised the funds to purchase 2 large homes, converting each into living spaces for 14 residents. These houses offer a home atmosphere with shared meals, housekeeping, and opportunities for socialization. Many members of USR have volunteered at Share over the years, and some of our members and their relatives have also lived there. Share receives no governmental aid and is funded entirely by rent and donations. The money we collect this November will go to the Ritter Fund, which helps supplement those struggling to meet the fee. Please give generously to honor USR's legacy. The offering will now be given and gratefully received. In today's reading, Joy Reid interviews Dana Hedgepeth, a member of the Haliwa-Saponi tribe of North Carolina, and Brian Whedon, who's chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe, about what Thanksgiving means to them. We listen to them in order to hear from people whose experience has been erased or ignored, and to seek a more accurate understanding of our shared history. We can be grateful for their message, even if it makes us a little uncomfortable, because we believe spiritual growth involves a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. So let's hear what these two have to teach us.
This year marks 400 years since English pilgrims and the Eastern Wampanoags allegedly sat down and broke bread. The meeting, now known as Thanksgiving, is an annual holiday celebrated by many Americans, but not all. Flip open any children's book about that day, and you'll read about the hard-scrabble pilgrims who landed on mostly uninhabited land, and thanks to Native Americans festooned in feathers, they survived and celebrated that feat around wild turkey and corn. Except that's not how it happened. As the Washington Post recently noted, the Wampanoag, a name that means the people of the first light, have lived on these lands as far back as 10,000 years, far longer than any American. By the time they had met the Pilgrims, their community had already been devastated by an epidemic brought to their shores by previous English settlers. So in 1620, when they watched Mayflower strangers invade their land, they thought they would try things differently. And by the spring of 1621, they made contact. In the fall of that year, the Pilgrims, who struggled through a harsh winter and learned how to plant beans and squash thanks to the Wampanoag, celebrated the success of their first harvest. They didn't think to invite the people who helped save their lives. Bet you didn't know that, because they don't tell you that part in the textbooks. In fact, the Wampanoag showed up later, only after the Pilgrims fired off their muskets. Naturally, the Wampanoag heard the gunfire and thought war was afoot. Realizing that wasn't the case, they wound up sitting down with the people who would become their colonizers. For many indigenous people, Thanksgiving is not a day to be celebrated, but rather a day to be mourned. Because while we gorge ourselves on turkey and stuffing, for Native people, that day represents the start of hundreds of years of genocide, colonization, disease, and forced indoctrination of children stolen from their parents and forced to abandon their language and their culture in government-run boarding schools. With me now is Dana Hedgepeth, Washington Post reporter and member of the Halawa Saponi tribe of North Carolina, and Brian Whedon, chairman of the Mashpee Wampanoag tribe. Thank you both for being here. Really appreciate you. I want to start with you, Dana. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. And why did you write that piece? What prompted you to do it? There have been a lot of attempts, I think, over the years to sort of reimagine and sort of rediscover what Thanksgiving ought to be. What prompted you to write this piece?
You know, it came about from a conversation with a very good editor at the Washington Post, Linda Robinson, and we were chatting. She said, "How do you celebrate Thanksgiving?" I'm Native American. I'm from the Halawa Saponi tribe in North Carolina. And I sort of chuckled and said, we don't celebrate the same way you do. Thanksgiving doesn't mean to Native Americans what it does to many others in the country. And so that got us thinking, what's the best way to tell that story? And the 400th anniversary brought about a great opportunity to do that. I was very fortunate to meet Chairman Whedon through introductions and to really listen to their side of the story that, as you said, is so often not shared.
Yeah. And, Chief Whedon, I think that's an excellent point, because I think there is an American tick of sort of looking at the arrival of Europeans here as just a triumph, right? A triumph of will, a triumph of the Mayflower and the Nina and the Pinta and the Santa Maria, and sort of whitewash the fact that there were people here. And then to take those people and just make them, well, those were their friends, and they gave them corn, and then everybody did Thanksgiving. And to wipe out really what was a really tragic history, including for the Wampanoag, of, encountering European settlers, getting wiped out by disease, maybe smallpox or whatever germs they were carrying, and then encountering them again, and then being colonized. How do the Wampanoag look at Thanksgiving, and what would you be doing on that day?
I think first and foremost, it's important to understand that the Wampanoag people have always been welcoming. One of the reasons why we didn't wipe out the English was because they brought their women and children. We never brought our women and children to fight into battle, so we thought that they had come in peace. It's kind of, ignorant bliss on our side, I guess. And we were, more welcoming and, taught them how to grow their corn and their crops and to stay here. We've always been welcoming people, and we still are welcoming people. It hasn't really worked to our advantage over the past 400 years. We're now witnessing another pandemic here in the nation with COVID. So all the diseases that come through, we're still having diseases and these problems still today. I would say that, Thanksgiving is a day of mourning. The fact that our tribe only owns half of 1% of our ancestral territory, and 400 years later, we're still waiting for our fair share from the federal government and the Commonwealth, I think is pretty unacceptable.
Yeah, and I was just looking at Dana Hedgepeth. You write about the division of land and taking what had been vast lands that the Wampanoag had, dividing it up into like 60-acre chunks and defying the culture of these great people who didn't divide land that way and tax it that way. What did you discover about how life has changed for this tribe in the centuries since, and how much of that culture remains? And I'll ask both of you that question, but I'll ask you as somebody who just finished doing this piece.
Well, they are alive and strong. As the chairman said, very welcoming people. And as Frank James, who's a very well-known Wampanoag activist who made a very famous speech in the 1970s, who was dejected, in fact, from giving that speech publicly at the time. But perhaps the best line from his speech was, befriending the Pilgrims was perhaps our biggest mistake. Just if you think about that and let that resonate for a moment, it did open up a long, slow, painful process of genocide, taking of lands, taxation, ownership, things that were the antithesis of the very culture that American Indians and the Wampanoags especially prided themselves in.
And, Chief Whedon, you're young. I'm just looking at your age. You're only 28 years old. So you're, a young man who's growing up, both within your tribe and in your culture, but in this country. And I wonder, what do you say to people who just want to move on, who just want to do the tomahawk chop at an Atlanta Braves game, who are like, why are you making such a big deal out of that? Why can't we just do Thanksgiving the way we want to? Including some younger people who don't want to deal with this history and especially don't want to deal with anything like reparations.
I think it boils down to this nation. I mean, look at all the monuments and all these people that we, classify as heroes and our founding fathers. When you actually look into the history of what these people did, President Lincoln was one of the ones who had one of the biggest massacres, of Native Americans in his time. And he wanted to bring the nation together, so he decided to make this a holiday. I think that the country and the nation has played their part, and we don't do a good job at putting out the accurate information. It's very one-sided, and that's why we're here today, to put our story out there so that we can bring awareness to this issue. I think that it's ignorance on a lot of parts, but as young people, I believe that it's our generation that will make that change and start uniting our nation.
Dana Hedgepeth, thank you for writing this very important piece. Hopefully everyone will read it. Brian Whedon, Chief Brian Whedon, Chairman Brian Whedon, more accurately. Thank you very much. Really appreciate you for being here. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. This year marks 4.
I invite you, as you are willing, into this time of meditation and reflection and into this practice of gratitude. If you like to write as a way of reflection, feel free to grab a journal or a piece of paper or something to write with. It's also okay just to find a comfortable position to sit in or stand in, or whatever is most comfortable for you and your body, to help you feel at ease. First, I invite you to take a few relaxing breaths. In and out. Feel free to close your eyes if that is most comfortable, or to leave them gently open. Breathe in a way that feels comfortable and relaxing. I invite you at first just to pay attention to your body. If there's a place of tension or pain, imagine breathing your breath into that part of your body. Imagine the breath sort of expanding that area of tension, and then breathing out through that pain or tightness, feeling the muscles release with the out breath. With breathing in, sort of expand your attention in any area of tension. Breathe out through that area, letting the tension go. Breathing in through areas of tension, and out, letting go of that tension or pain if you can. Now I invite you to Bring your attention to your heart space, to your chest, maybe your abdomen if you prefer. Again, just gentle breaths, breathing that feels natural and relaxing. And just be aware of anything that you're feeling. If you're feeling joy or calm and peace, if you're feeling sadness or grief or anxiousness, just be aware of it. Breathe alongside that feeling. Offer yourself compassion for whatever may be present to you right now. As you continue to breathe, ask yourself if there's anything or anyone you are feeling grateful for. Just ask yourself in your heart, what or who are you grateful for? Is there anyone who's caring for you, showing you care, inspiring you, comforting you? Anyone who you love, who you are grateful for? Hold that person, those people. Visualize them, hold them in the gratitude that you feel for them. Breathe in that feeling of gratitude. Breathe out that gratitude for those loved ones. I invite you to just take a few more breaths. And as you do so, I invite you to think about anything about this day, anything that's happened, anything that you're looking forward to. If you have a window nearby, maybe you can see some sky or sun or tree or rain. Just be present to that. Take it in. Hold in your attention anything that you are grateful for from this day, that you're grateful to be looking forward to in this day. Anything that's present to you right now. I'm giving thanks for the sunshine after so much rain. Just hold that gratitude and that attention in your heart, in your mind, as you breathe in and out gently. Take a few more breaths and imagine just opening your heart space wide and asking if there's anything else you're grateful for. Their friends or community, faith, connections that you appreciate and feel attentive to open your heart to other things than in your life in this moment that you are feeling grateful for. Hold those in your attention. Breathe in that feeling of gratitude. Breathe in imagining or holding in your mind those people, those things, those connections. Breathe in that gratitude. It's also okay if some of our relationships are mixed with other emotions besides gratitude. Be present to that. Breathe it in. As you continue to breathe, just take a moment to hold in your attention all these connections, all these relationships, all these gifts that you are grateful for. Bring them to your attention again together. Breathe in the gratitude you feel. Breathe out gratitude across those connections. And as you are ready, as you continue to just breathe gently, you can bring your attention back to this time, to your body, to each other gathered in meditation. And as we close, and as you breathe gently, maybe offer a word in silence or out loud or spoken, just a word of gratitude for these gifts. Blessed be, and amen. Dear ones, I'm going to be honest with you. For me, these past few months have been rough. As the pandemic wears on, I have experienced a level of exhaustion I have not known before. And it's not just the pandemic, it's witnessing the devastating impacts of widespread disinformation, the attacks on our democracy, the attacks on people's lives and rights. It's the attack on women's rights and reproductive health. And it is living through the increasingly frequent impacts of climate change. It has all been so much. And there is still so much grief at the loss of loved ones, family members, friends, and the nearly incalculable loss of so many lives to this pandemic. The despair is real. If you are feeling it, I want you to know you are not alone. I knew this in-between or liminal time would be more difficult than the early days of the pandemic, but I didn't really appreciate how it would feel in my body and spirit. But here's the thing that is saving me now. I have found myself out of necessity turning towards gratitude. As we enter this season of holidays and holy days, we have an opportunity to draw our attention to what sustains us, to draw our attention to the sources of love and care and gratitude in our lives. However you celebrate, holidays are a time that, and the rituals that surround them, are an opportunity for reflection. They often invite us to remember our past, which can bring joy as well as sorrow. But they also remind us to be attentive to the present moment. The writer and activist Adrienne Marie Brown writes, "I have had to soften my grip on a fearful future narrative and return to the humility of the present." I have had to soften my grip on a fearful future narrative and return to the humility of the present. Spiritually, in my daily practice, I am leaning into gratitude and attention to the sustaining present moment because I need a way to get in touch with the sources of joy and compassion in my life. Joy and compassion are life-sustaining. We are made for joy and compassion. Leaning into gratitude for this earth, gratitude for the relationships that sustain me, leaning into the presence of love that surrounds me and all of us, leaning into the gift that is present with each breath of life. This practice is bringing more joy and light into my spirit. Gratitude is a foundation for so many of the values and qualities that we hope to nurture. Gratitude helps us appreciate our loved ones and bring more care and attention to that which matters most. With time and consistency, practicing gratitude does nurture more in in life. It makes us attentive to the beauty and the gifts that surround us and that are not of our own making. Gratitude helps us turn our unrealized desires to an appreciation of what we already have, and for what Adrienne Marie Brown describes as the humility of the present. Gratitude is a foundation for touching the earth with reverence, a practice of seeing life and the beauty of creation as a gift and treating it as such. Practicing gratitude, being intentional in taking time to name what we are grateful for, also reminds us of our fundamental interdependence. When I ask myself, what am I grateful for? I think of the people that I love and who love me. I think of the relationships that sustain me. I think of my sweet dog and how much I love him, how grateful I am for his presence in our family. I think of the gift of the earth. I open my attention and give thanks for the blue sky or the rain, for the trees and the sun, for the wind and the life-giving water. I remember the fundamental interdependence in which I am held, in which all life is held. And I feel that as a source of strength and connection. One of the things I love most about gratitude is that it's concrete. We all know what gratitude means. We know what it is to feel thankful. On the one hand, gratitude is simple and clear. However, when we really foster an intentional practice of being mindful every day, of taking time every day to think about what we are grateful for, to think about the gifts that have come to us and sustain us, we realize that gratitude actually has the power to deeply change our perspective. It has the power to shape and reshape our communities and our culture. Gratitude is incredibly powerful. Gratitude is a concrete practice that with time unlocks a generosity of spirit and a generosity of love. Experiencing our interconnectedness, experiencing the ways that we are not isolated beings, but deeply connected and held by gifts not of our own making, inspires a generosity of spirit for ourselves and for others. It inspires a desire to nurture those connections with love, to pay more attention to what matters. So I am calling myself back to gratitude these days. I am calling myself back to a practice of gratitude to find my way through the grief and the fear and the struggle and the despair. Now, to be clear, this practice of gratitude doesn't make our grief or my grief go away. And it doesn't mean I don't still have moments of fear and anger or feel gripped by despair. Intentional spiritual practice actually makes space for all of us to welcome whatever is present in our hearts. And gratitude reminds me that that is not all that life holds for me. There are so many ways to create a regular practice of gratitude. I know people who have gratitude journals who spend a little time each day writing down 1 or 2 or 3 things that they were grateful for from that day. Many years ago, I had a practice where every time I would cross the threshold of my home, either to leave or to come back home, as I crossed the threshold, I would pause and take a breath, and I would recall something that I was grateful for from the day or from the morning. These days, I am making time in my morning practice to ask myself what I am grateful for and to open my heart to those gifts. When our spirits are worn and weary from grief and loss and fear and anger, which legitimately our spirits are rightfully weary. When we are too short with ourselves or others too impatient or critical or negative with ourselves or others, gratitude can be a practice that nurtures in us a generosity of spirit, a generosity of kindness. So much right now seeks to isolate us, to divide us, to wear us out and wear us down. Turning towards a concrete practice of gratitude helps combat the ways in which we are being called to isolation and division, because gratitude actually turns us toward each other. Reminds us of our interconnectedness, which is so critically, spiritually needed in our world these days. I know there are times in our lives when our despair and our grief is so great that we may not be able to even name one thing we are grateful for. I know those days are real. However, I also know that even if nothing comes, that just calling our attention to look for things we are grateful for helps open our eyes, our attention, our spirits, so that with time, we can become more aware of the gifts around us. Gratitude and practicing gratitude each day has been saving me. It's been reminding me of joy. It's been inspiring in me more joy, compassion, pleasure, humility. It's been reminding me of the gifts that are present in each moment. And finally, I want to say how grateful I am for all of you, and how grateful I am for this faith that we share. This faith that nurtures and sustains and holds me in these days. My prayer for you, my offering for you, I pray that there may be more moments of gratitude and joy in your days. And know that we are, all of us, deeply connected by unseen but real threads of compassion, of humanity and care, and that this is a source of strength and love in our lives. Blessings to you, blessed be, and I love you.
Please join in singing our hymn, number 309, Earth is Our Homeland. Earth is our homeland, a song of stars, a grace, wrought of the ages, an opal spun in space. Dawn's far blue hill, soft nighttime still, dark ocean depth, smooth stone, for gifts sublime that hallow time will sing, making deep thanksgiving known. Word is our glory, our breath of air, our cry. Parables, letters, or star names in the sky, or myths that play as poets pray, bring meaning to our lives. For every praise that hones our days we'll sing, till the final day arrives. Music is wonder, an alchemy of art, love's pure enchantment, communion for the heart. chants to psalms, from jazz to Brahms, no soul may stay at rest. For starry choir in sky afire will sing, joined with them in anthem blest. Hope is our high star, the certitude love brings. Silence our center, our living water spring. The waking heart, no self apart from whole and mystery. For gatherings of strengthening will sing throughout human history.
Now please join in the words for extinguishing the chalice. We extinguish the flame, but may the light of truth, the warmth of love, and the energy of action burn bright in our hearts until we are together. Blessed be.